أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد الله وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء أما بعد يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. The releases of the two seas are meeting. Between them is a barrier, so neither of them transgress. Insha'Allah, utilizing this verse, we want to bless the majalis, insha'Allah, by first remembering a salawat for the greatest man to walk this earth, Al-Habib al-Mustafa Muhammad. The second in honor of the greatest lady to walk this earth, Al-Hawra'u al-Batulati Fatima. Allahumma. The third with your loudest voices in honor of our Imam, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Allah. The reality of death Malik al-Maut just came after I said that one. The reality of death is one that many people will find discomfort in its discussion. But yet it's the one that each and every human on this planet knows is going to be their final abode. Whether that personality is Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or indeed doesn't believe in a God, that you'll find they'll all come together and say, we believe there's such a thing as death. And we understand this. The people of religion have the knowledge and have the capabilities to learn from the messengers that Allah sent in order for them to learn about this final abode and indeed learn about the transition from this world to the next realms that are there. But you'll find on one side, you'll find whenever a discussion of death comes, the first group of people will have this understanding of fear towards this topic. And that fear stems from a lack of preparation for the thing at hand. As in for us, now we'll go on with our daily lives, not thinking at all in the back of our minds that there is a concept such as death. Because for one reason or another, that we are so occupied with our daily lives, that death is something that we tend not to think about and not to have in front of us on a daily perspective. But you'll find other people around the world where they see death in a daily notion, they will begin to analyze their lifestyles and think, am I ready? And when we find the traditions that come from Imam al-Baqir alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam, Allahumma, such as the ones that say, make sure that you die before you die. And someone may look at these traditions like, how on earth do I die before I die? As in there's one death which brings me to the next realm. But the understanding, the metaphorical understanding from the Imam is set to teach us that are your affairs in order? Are your worship in order? Is everything between you and the servants of Allah in order? That if you were to die, that you are prepared for death, that you have nothing owing between you and Allah, between you and the servants of Allah, between you and a nidhr, between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is everything settled, that if Malik al-Maut was to come, that there is no problem and there is no fear between you and the angel. Because as we know, there's a tradition that states that the angel of death comes across each and every person 5 times every night, or during the course of the day 5 times. Traditions come forward and say every time of salat, the angel of death will visit you and will see and will look at that tablet that Allah gives him. Has that person's name come that I take his soul? Or has Allah blessed him with a longer life? That's not once every day, but the tradition says that 5 times every day the angel will come across each and every one of us. Now, knowing this notion that at any time that name of ours can appear on the tablet of the angel of death, should it in itself strike fear in our hearts to tell ourselves before anyone else, are we ready? Am I ready? Have I settled my affairs, knowing that the angel sees me every day 5 times? As in, we know that death isn't a simple aspect. We've sugarcoated many things, but this particular notion of death is one that we really need to understand and be prepared for. So in tonight's lecture, we want to look at this realm that we only have access to through the people that come from the skies, through revelation, through prophets. As you go to anyone that doesn't have a connection with religion or doesn't have a connection with the teachings of the Imam, and they will not be able to tell you anything about the realms that preceded, nor about the realms that are to come. That these information we can only solely find through the Quran and the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt. And so tonight we're going to look at these topics or notions by first analyzing the concept of death. Many of us will hear death is something that's quite painful. As in, sakaratul maut is one that cannot be taken lightly. When understanding that sakaratul maut cannot be taken lightly, does this apply just for the disbelievers, as in their punishment when the soul is taken? Are they the only ones that have pain? Or will the believers feel that pain when the souls are extracted? Secondly, what traditions do we have about the extraction of the soul? As in, if it's a good notion, what are the different examples that we are given? And if it's a negative notion in its pain, what are the different traditions that we are given about the pain and its tolerance? We want to learn from a tradition from Nabi Allah Ibrahim about how the angel of death comes to us. As in, if you're a believer, does the angel of death come differently? Then the angel of death would come to a disbeliever, or does he come exactly the same to both parties, whether it be the believer or a disbeliever? Then we want to look at this concept of barzakh. What is barzakh? How long is barzakh? Where exactly is it? Is it in the ground? Is it in the sky? Where is this concept of barzakh? Then we want to look at ourselves in barzakh. As in, how do we transition? Do we transition with our body? Does our soul roam free? Do we only have access to the grave that we're in? Or do we have other accessibilities? Then we're going to look at the understanding of, can we have access to the loved ones in barzakh? Or do they have access to us? Or is there no access between us and the people in barzakh? Then we're going to look at how we are resurrected. As in, when we die, how we resurrected in barzakh. And when we die and we complete barzakh, how we'll be resurrected in the hereafter. And then we're going to look at the flag bearer, insha'Allah, to learn from him and what he achieved on the 10th of Muharram. So insha'Allah, we can bless the majlis and indeed try to look into, very briefly, because it's a massive topic, very briefly, at a glimpse, look into these factors of the concept of the afterlife. So let's bless the majlis with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Death. Many of us will say that this sakaratul maut are difficult only for the disbelievers. We have examples whereby we find that when Maryam alayha afdal salati was salam, when she's resurrected by Isa, she would say the following lines: "Oh my son, why did you bring me back?" Isa would say, "Oh, mother, I thought you'd be happy to be back into this world." She would reply by saying, "The pain of my soul being extracted. Its taste is still on my tongue, O Isa. Still on my tongue. Nabi Allah Musa, for example, we have the beautiful tradition where the angel of death will come to Musa. Musa says, have you come as a visitor or a qabid? As in, are you extracting or are you visiting? As you know, the Anbiya had relationships with the angels. As in, they would talk to them, learn from them, teach them, be their companions. So he says, I've come to extract your soul. Look at the dialogue. Musa would say, where are you going to extract my soul from? So the angel of death would say, I'm going to extract the soul from your tongue, O Musa. Musa would say, O Israel, as in, this is the tongue, I'm known as Kalimullah. How can you extract it from a tongue that spoke to Allah? He says, no problem. I'll extract it from your hands. He says, how can you when I held that staff and I performed the miracles with my hands? He says, no problem. I'll extract it from your feet. He would say, how can you when these feet actually were the ones that would be stepping on Tur Sina? He would say, every time I tell him something, he would tell me that I've done this with this body, this body, this body. He says, all of a sudden, the angel of death says, here's an orange, particular fruit between, let's say, lemon and orange. Gives it to him. He says, smell this fruit. And the tradition says, as he's smelling the fruit, he extracts his soul. So you tell me, when we listen to this tradition, you think to ourselves, how easy was it that he just extracts the soul as soon as he smells a fruit? But when he's asked, Musa, what did you feel when your soul was extracted? He says, I felt like I was a sheep being skinned. So all of a sudden we find ourselves, the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of a sudden it's given us an indication that they felt pain within their extractions. What hope do we have? But then we have the traditions, and many of them would say the following. There's a reason for it. They would say, for a believer, the extraction of one's soul has different examples. Of the examples, is it as if a person is smelling a beautiful flower. By the time he finishes inhaling that beautiful smell, he's in alam al-barzakh, for example, or his soul is extracted. Another tradition would say, no, for the believer in this world, it's as if he's been chained, and what he's doing when his soul's been extracted from this dunya, it's as if he's removing himself from those shackles and chains. Another tradition would say, for a believer, it's as if he's taking off dirty garments and putting new, beautiful new ones. We have those traditions. Then we have traditions for the disbelievers, saying, for a disbeliever, the examples vary. I'm going to give you the smallest in its pain tolerance, just to give you examples of where it can go. The traditions would come forward and say, it's as if your soul's been extracted. Imagine nail clippers made of fire in every single point of your body. Every point that there's skin, there's a nail clipper made of fire. That's the pain. Another would come forward and say, no, imagine the greatest door you can imagine. And it's placed on a needle. And that needle is placed in your eye. He says that's the pain of your soul being extracted if you're a disbeliever. So then we ask, all of a sudden we have all these differing understandings of different pains that are associated with the extraction. But all of a sudden we found that the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also have pain in their extraction. How do we justify this? So the tradition come forward and tell us that Allah, for a believer, no problem. That when he's extracting the soul, he can extract it in a manner where you don't have pain. But he says, if I wanted to cause pain, if that believer of mine, if that abid of mine has, let's say, particular sins, particular wrongdoings, things that he hasn't cleared, that I need to punish him for before I put him into Jannah, that I may use that pain in the extraction in order for me to filter his sins. Meaning, yes, your final abode is Jannah. But you have sins. You have something that you need to clarify, to clear, that you need to be punished for a particular action. Allah says, no problem, you didn't finalize it in this world, I will utilize that pain in the extraction to clear your book of deeds, let's say. That when you come to barzakh or you come to the hereafter, that you're cleared straight to Jannah. You don't have to be, punished in hell, purified and going to Jannah. He says that pain is enough for me to remove those sins. And on the flip side, many of us will have the question, as in Allah is all just. What about these people that are disbelievers? These people that don't have a belief in Allah, that have a deviated belief. But what we knew from them is only that which is good, that they helped people, that they sponsored orphans, that they gave money in a good way. They had many a good quality, but they disbelieved. They enjoined partners to God. We know where their final abode is. Wallahu a'lam. But it's saying, if you have a good deed, that Allah wants to clear that good deed from you, to give you its rewards, He will make your extraction of the soul easy. You won't even feel it. You won't have that pain. But Maulana, this person's final abode is hell, for example. He's done good deeds. He says, yes. That's why he hasn't felt that. Allah removed that pain from him for all those good deeds. He may have a good barzakh. In order for him, when he comes to the hereafter, Allah has already given him his reward for all his good deeds. By not causing him pain, by not causing him pain within the extraction, pain within barzakh. So when he comes in the day of judgment and he opens his book, he's already got his due reward. Justice. It's very interesting, when we look at it, it's not that far away. Bahlul, the time of Harun al-Rashid, we know the stories of Bahlul where he acts insane. One day he takes the keys for the jail and he goes in and frees all of the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. As you know, they used to jail them and kill them only for being the followers, or from the descendants. So he'd free them. Harun wakes up from his intoxication and he says, what's going on? They said, everyone's been freed from your prisons. He says, who's done that? Bahlul. Find me Bahlul, he needs to be prosecuted and punished. They'd look for Bahlul. They found him in the graveyard. Harun comes to him, Bahlul, what have you done? He said, I freed their prisoners. He says, you need to go and get back each and every one of those prisoners, or I will punish you a punishment like I've never punished anyone before you. Right now, Bahlul. Sitting down. Bahlul, get up. He says, oh, didn't you tell me to get all of them? He says, yes. He says, no problem. Just wait here with me. What do you mean, Bahlul? He says, look, they can go all they want in this world. They're going to come back to this graveyard 6 feet under. Don't worry. You want them? They'll all come here. Giving us an indication, it doesn't matter, we have limited time on this planet. One day we're all going to be 6 feet under. What have we done whilst we were above this soil before we go under it? Let's put ourselves, mutu qabla an tamutu. What have we brought forward with everything that Allah has gifted to us? What have we provided? What have we benefited ourselves, our families, our communities before Allah takes His amana? So that's one notion that we understand from the story of Ibrahim. When Ibrahim sees Malik al-Maut, O Malik al-Maut, O Israel, can you show me what a believer would see when you come towards him to extract his soul? So Israel shows him, Malik al-Maut shows him. And he came in such a manner as a youth that was so pleasing to look at, the fragrance like that, like you've never smelt before. Ibrahim has a statement. He says, for a believer, if he didn't get any reward, it sufficed for that believer that he sees Malik al-Maut coming towards him like that, as a reward of how he feels in safety and serenity and salvation. Then he looks at the angel of death and he says to the angel, he says, can you show me what a disbeliever sees? So the angel of death says, you won't be able to handle it, O Ibrahim. When he says you'll not be able to handle it, keep in mind this notion that the prophets were the ones that were the most steadfast on the religion, the ones that had the strongest hearts, the strongest iman. And the angel says, you won't be able to handle it, O Ibrahim. This is a person that when he was flung into the fire, that Jibreel would come to him multiple times saying, do you want me to save you? And Ibrahim would say, no, Allah a'lam bihali. Allah knows what I'm going through. He'll save me. Angel comes, he says, oh Ibrahim, turn away and then turn back to me while I transform. So the tradition says Ibrahim looks away and then he looks back. As soon as he looks at the angel, he faints. When he awakes, the angel's back. He says, what did I see, O Israel? He says, that's what the disbeliever sees when I come towards him to extract his soul. He says, by Allah, if there was no punishment, none whatsoever in the hellfire, or in the hereafter, or in the barzakh, it's enough punishment to see you like that. Enough punishment. This is a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the 5 greatest as well. And for him to say that should really strike us. So what's barzakh? As we know, when we die, we go towards the grave. We're placed in our graves and we are questioned by Munkar and Nakir. Or in some traditions, if you're a mu'min salih, you'll be questioned by Mubashir and Bashir. They give different names to the angels, depending on how they're going to give you glad tidings or give you other tidings that you don't want to hear. So you'll find when you're in your grave, we have that concept that you'll be questioned. Who is your Lord? Who is your Prophet? Who is your Imam? What is your book? And many of us think this notion is the fact that we can only learn who is our Lord, or learn about Rasulullah, or learn about Amir al-Mu'mineen, or learn about the Quran. No. When we understand that your tongue will be held, that your body will speak, your tongue all of a sudden, no more. You've spoken enough in this world. Let your jawarih speak. And when you're asked, if you didn't apply tawheed in your life, you won't be able to reply towards the angels. If you haven't understood and put into your life the concept of nubuwwah, you won't be able to reply. If you haven't understood the position of imamat, you won't be able to reply. If you haven't opened the Quran and found all of what Allah is trying to teach us and applied it to your life, you won't be able to reply. It's only through application will you have the ability to reply to the angels in the grave. At that moment, depending on your answers, depending on your livelihood, either a gate will be open or a door towards the barzakh of heaven, or a door will be open towards the barzakh of hell, depending on your final abode. Understanding this, people will question, well, hold on. If my body is in the grave, how do I transition from the body to the barzakh? How do I transition? The traditions tell us that your soul, at that moment, after you've given your answers to Munkar and Nakir or Mubashir and Bashir, it's taken from your human body and put into something they call a barzakh body. Barzakh body isn't a clay body. It's something to be, let's say, transparent, but has a physical feature, let's say, that when a person would look towards you, they can identify you. And that barzakh body is identical to your human body. So when you see someone in alam al-ru'ya, you recognize them for who they are. But that barzakh body is a different element, different material. Transparent, let's say. Light, let's say. So the question is, hold on. All of a sudden, we've entered this new body. Are you saying we're no longer in the grave? Then if we're not in the grave, because we always hear about the squeeze of the grave. or the expansion of the grave, then where's barzakh in the equation? The understanding of the squeeze or the expansion, is that how you feel within that questionnaire between you and the angels? As in, when you're questioned, either you are squeezed, or when you're questioned, you're that at ease, that it feels very open and expanded for you. When you enter barzakh, where is it? Is it under the earth? Is it in the heavens? The traditions tell us that you know where we're living. That's the exact area in which barzakh is. That's what we find Amir al-Mu'mineen, every time he'd come towards a particular land, the companions would see him and say, what are you doing, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? And they find him talking towards, for example, the martyrs that were there in Siffin. And he would say, you've left me, O my companions. And they would ask him, how can you hear them? Amir al-Mu'mineen would reply by saying, the veils between me and them are removed. Quran, what does it say? بَيْنَهُمَا بَرْزَخٌ لَا يَبْغِيَانِ. Barzakh in its essence means a veil. Veil between us and that realm. There's a veil. So the question now is there a way that we can communicate, or they can communicate with us? We say yes. There's three significant ways. The first is the one that we all know. Through alam al-ru'ya, we may be able to see a loved one. As in, many of us will have a person that passed away. Many of us will have people that we know of, that we may see in a dream. But when we see them as they lived in this world, in its barzakh body, like we stated, because it's identical to your human body. And sometimes they give us an understanding, they may have something that they're owing. They may have something that you need to perform for them. Or they may tell us something that will benefit us and the community. Many times we hear scholars teaching us things from that particular realm, or teaching us what helped them within that realm. As an example, Al-Nakeeb, he tells his students and his sons that make sure everything that I've done, that I've given to this religion, nothing has helped me in this world of barzakh as much as me reciting Ziyarat Ashura every night. There he says, make sure that you tell the Shia to don't ever leave the ziyarah of Ashura every night. Examples of them that come towards the land of the dream to tell us that they may have problems. They may need you to assist them in a manner where they need to wipe their slates clean. As an example, look at how delicate, by the way, this notion is. There was a scholar, an alim, his students narrates the story. He says that all we knew about the scholar was that he was absolute greatness and he was a role model for us. He says, one day I saw him in a dream. He says, I entered his bustan, his garden, and I saw him sitting in such a relaxing atmosphere that when I came towards him, I told him, how is your barzakh? How is your afterlife? He would say, it's amazing. As he's talking to him, he says, all of a sudden the entire realm that we were in changed from sunny skies to dark fields. He says, at the distance, I saw a bee coming towards him, and he was paralyzed. His tongue would come out of his mouth, that bee would sting him. He says, I've never seen a person in more of an excruciating pain than I saw my teacher. When that bee would go away, all of a sudden everything became better again. The sun comes out, everything was normal, and he became better. So I asked him, oh my teacher, what's just occurred? He says, oh student of mine, I have lived a life of a scholar, done everything that I need to. I have one request from you. He says, what's the request? He says, my wife has something against me. I need you to make her forgive me for it. So he says, that's it? Is it one element? He says, yes, please go towards my wife, allow her to forgive me in order for this pain to be removed from me in barzakh. So he goes next day in the morning, knocks the door of the alim's house. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Are you the wife of the scholar? He goes, yes. Can I please enter? I have something to tell you. Bismillah. Enters. When he enters, he tells her, how was your husband in your marital life? How was he as a father, as a husband? She goes, I have nothing except that which is good. There's absolutely nothing against him. There's one thing, but it's insignificant. Because what was it? She goes, I'm an elderly lady. And her name was Fatima, by the way. She goes, I'm an elderly lady. And every time we'd go towards the in-laws, as in her parents' house, he used to call me Fattum. So in Iraqi culture, sometimes we have notions, Muhammad, we sometimes, give some love to. We call him Hamoud, for example. Or Ali, we call him Allawi, for example. A bit of love, but, at the same time, not everyone appreciates it. So she says, I told him, I'm an elderly lady. Fattum is still, it's a romantic period when you call each other these names. I'm elderly in front of my parents. Don't call me Fattum, please. Call me Fatima. So she would say, he kept calling me Fattum. So because I still have something in my heart towards him. So the student relays the story that he saw in his dream to the wife. This is because of that little aspect of, let's say, discomfort towards your husband, that Allah has punished him in such a way that I've never seen anyone in such pain. He says, if that's the case, I've forgiven him. The next day he sees his teacher in the dream. He says, thank you for removing that from me. Alluding to us the fact that we may think something is small that we do. In the eyes of the person, it could be massive. In the eyes of Allah, even greater. Every little atom grain of good will have its due reward, as the Quran says. And every atom weight of bad will have its punishment. Atom weight. So these souls, all of a sudden, whether they're in comfort, whether they're in punishment, where are they? The traditions tell us that the souls of the believers, if it's righteous soul, if it's a believer's soul, once it's placed in the grave, and that notion after the question is finished, that soul, when it's removed, will make its way towards Wadi Salam, next to Amir al-Mu'mineen's grave. The Mu'mineen, how about the disbelievers? Imam al-Baqir is asked, he says, what about the disbelievers? If the souls of the righteous go towards Wadi Salam, accompanying next to the neighboring aspect of Amir al-Mu'mineen, how about the evil souls? And he would reply by saying that there is a wadi by the name of Wadi Barahut. Wadi Barahut. There was a person that comes. Imam al-Baqir asks him, he says, where have you come from? He would say, I've come from a very far land. So Imam says, however far it is, it's still on this earth. Where have you come from? He would say, I've come from the land of Yemen. He says, tell me, as you were passing the land of Yemen to come here, did you come past 2 palm trees in which all the people that come for business and trade rest under its shades? He says, yes, I rested as well. He says, behind it, is there a valley in which you find darkness? He says, yes, there is a valley, but no one dares to tread in that valley. Because only in that valley you'll find snakes and owls that come. And we hear sounds in the nights like we've never heard before. It strikes fear into our hearts. Imam would say that's the Wadi of Barahut. Righteous souls that way. Not righteous souls the other. That's why when we find a person, when he passes away, he will come towards the companions and he would ask them, in Wadi Salam, for example, says, Fulan, such and such passed away before me. Where is he? Is he in these groups? Is he amongst these souls in Wadi Salam? They would say, no, he hasn't come towards the Wadi Salam. So they would say, well, obviously, if he's not in Wadi Salam, he's in Wadi Barahut. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, these people, if you will only be able to see them and how they are in Barzakh, you would see them in gatherings of circles, discussing amongst them, learning from each other, entertaining each other, happiness alongside each other. Such is the life of Barzakh. It's not just a hole in the ground and you have no one visiting you. But is everyone's the same? No. Some people are of the opinion, barzakh, because when we die until we are resurrected in the hereafter, are of the opinion that it's exact amount of time, as in the longest person technically. The barzakh for the longest person would be Habil, because he was killed by Qabil, the first person, isn't it? So he'd have the longest barzakh. And the shortest is the one that was killed before Qiyam al-Sa'ah, for example. But no, Isa teaches us that a person comes across a grave. This grave, when he looks at it, new grave, just been put together, the person's just been buried and they've just covered up the grave, put the tombstone. He says, by Allah's might, He resurrects the person that's in the grave. The tradition says when he was resurrected, they found him in such a manner. He was a youth when he was buried. Youth. The tradition says he came back as an elderly man charcoaled from fire. So Isa says, how long have you been in this grave? He says, Ya Nabi Allah, I can't even count the years I've been in here. Can't count the years. I've been here for so long. But in this realm, we know he's just been buried. Just been buried. But to him, because of the punishment, it's been years. Another grave, the tradition says, Isa comes upon another grave to give us examples. He says it was barely even a grave. You could barely make out that it's a grave. He says, I want to resurrect this elderly man. So he resurrects him. He says, tell me, how was your barzakh? How was your grave? How is your afterlife? How long have you been there? And he would reply by saying, O Nabi Allah, it's as if for me, I broke a pearl whilst I came into this realm. And I've been trying to collect the different pearls that went and scattered around this room. He says, I'm still picking them up and you've resurrected me. He says, was it a good place? He goes, of course, it was a beautiful place that I was in. Giving us an indication that barzakh can also be an understanding of where you will be in the hereafter, that Allah may expand your barzakh in punishment, or He may make it for you seem very short in a reward aspect. And if we look at it in perspective, if your barzakh is happy, time flies. But when you're being punished, every second feels like 1,000,000 years. So we have that notion now. So the first is that we see someone in alam al-ru'ya, that we may be able to see them. The second, what is it? Is the fact of alam al-mukashafa. What's mukashafa? Meaning to remove the veil. Anbiya, Mursaleen, Awliya, they have that ability to remove that veil. As an example, someone comes towards Imam al-Baqir alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam. He says, oh Imam, my father died knowing that I am of your followers, and he loved the Bani Umayyah. And he was a very wealthy man, but he left nothing to me. And he hid his treasure from me. Is there a way, O Imam, that you can tell me where his treasure is? As in, I'm the only inheritor for him. And it's my right, but he has removed it from me because I follow your school of thought, that I follow in your footsteps, that I am a lover of yours, O Imam. Imam replies to him saying, do you want me to talk to him and find out, or do you want to meet him yourself? He says, how can I meet him? He says, leave it to me. Do you want to meet him? He says, yes, of course. So he says, go towards Medina. He writes him a little note, folds the paper, gives it to him. He says, go to Medina. In the Baqi' at night, I want you to call the name Darjan. Call Darjan. Darjan, he'll appear to you. Give him this note. Tell him it's from Imam al-Baqir. So he does it. Goes in the Baqi' at night in Medina. Calls Darjan. Darjan. A person comes from the outside. He says, what is it? What's the problem? He says, I am a messenger from Imam al-Baqir and he's given me this letter to give to you. So he gives him the letter. He embraces the letter, goes. Then he comes back with a person that was unrecognizable. So this person saying, that's not my father. Darjan says, no, this is your father. He says, that can't be my father. My father looked very different. He says, this is your father. He replies, says, I am your father. This is what's happened to you. He says, such is the punishment from the person that doesn't believe in the wilayah of Al-Muhammad. He says, such that I now understand the position of the wali, the imam of the time. Oh my son, I have left my wealth away from you. But now that I see the truth, this is where it's buried. Take it and make use of it. So he goes indeed exactly where he told him he found that treasure. Comes towards Imam al-Baqir, gives the Imam half of that treasure. Imam Baqir says, what do you think? He says, how? He says, there is a veil between us and Barzakh. We see them, we hear them, we speak to them, but they're veiled from everyone. So number 2, Alam al-Mukashaf, Alam al-Ru'ya was number 1, the land of the dreams. Number 3, the connection is that they are able to visit us. Now pay attention to this notion. So many of us say to ourselves that, we make dua for them. Can they even hear us? When we recite something and do, nidhr to them and do ihda, gift it to them, we say, does it even get to them? Do they even feel it? Do they even hear us? They hear us. We do not hear them. That when we recite something for them, they receive it. But they are able to come and visit us. Now look at the difference. As a righteous person, they may give them, Thursday night for example, an indication that if they are righteous, they are able to visit their loved ones. If they are righteous, if they are mu'mineen, if they're the souls that will be in the final abode in Jannah, that when they come to see their loved ones and their family members, they will only be able to see them performing actions which allows their heart to be at ease and at rest. Meaning, when they come to visit us, they will only see us performing good deeds, performing salat, performing zakat, giving charity, enjoying relationships, being in the majalis of Abdullah. They'll see it. Only that which yusirru nafsah, makes them happy and sufficed. Mu'mineen. For the mushrikeen, they say that when they come to visit their loved ones, they will only be able to see that which hurts them. Not pleases, hurts them. As an extra layer of punishment. They will see them performing sins, being in gatherings which Allah doesn't allow, being with people in which you shouldn't, and what have you. But it displeases the soul of the disbeliever as an extra layer of punishment. Now, is there a level where we understand that there are personalities that are able to visit someone at any time? Because we know the mu'mineen can visit, for example, Thursday nights. They may have more of an indication that they may be able to visit because of their status in the eyes of Allah more than once in a week. We have a tradition telling us that there is a group of people that are allowed to visit anyone at any time. The shuhada. When we say the notion that Fatima al-Zahra is at every majlis, there's a reason behind it. That she's so high in the eyes of Allah and is a shaheed, that Allah gives her that rank. She visits, she sees, she comes to the lovers, comes to the majalis, comes towards your assistance. Even in Kerbala. But the interesting fact is, some places in Kerbala you'll find that Sayyidah Fatima was there. As an example, Ali al-Akbar, we have the tradition that says, when Ali al-Akbar was martyred, he says to Imam al-Hussein, he says, now my grandfather has given me from Hawd al-Kawthar, but I see my grandmother Fatima crying. She was there. But there's other notions in Kerbala where Fatima couldn't bear seeing what she saw. When you find the incident of how we are resurrected versus how we are in Barzakh. When it's in Barzakh, we'll find when we're resurrected, we are resurrected how we were living in barzakh. As in the body that we're given, it's how we were living on this world. But in the hereafter, we are resurrected how we died. Hijr ibn Adi, in his last request before he was killed, what did he say? He says, leave these shackles on me in order for Rasulullah to see me chained in defense of Amir al-Mu'mineen when I'm resurrected in the hereafter. The traditions that we have, that when we're resurrected in the hereafter is how we died. That's why we have the tradition stating that Imam al-Hussein, when he comes on the mahshar, will come as a body without a head. That he will come as a body holding his head in his hands. When we find Imam al-Hussein in the last moment of his life, when he takes the blood of his heart, he throws the first one towards the sky. The second one, what does he do? He takes it and he wipes his blessed beard. What does he say? Because he says, هَكَذَا أَلْقَى جَدِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ مُخَضَّبًا بِدَمِي. This is how I will see Rasulullah in the mahshar, covered with my blood. This is how I will see my grandfather. Resurrected in the hereafter, how you died. I ask you all, how will Aba Fadl al-Abbas be resurrected? Aba Fadl al-Abbas, the man that we remember tonight, when the spoils of war were taken, in the courtroom of Yazid, Yazid's eye fell on a flag. He looks at that flag, he says, who is this flag for? They say, this is the flag of Aba Fadl al-Abbas. You know what he says? He says, أَبَيْتَ اللَّعَنْ يَا عَبَّاسِ فَمِثْلِكَ لَا يُشْتَمْ. He says, oh Abbas, no one can curse you because of your character. Why did he say that? They say because when he looked at the flag, there was not an inch on the flag except there was a spear that was penetrating it, or a strike from a sword. Every inch was covered in strikes and blood except one, its handle where he held it. The only place where there wasn't a strike. He did not let that flag go down until his hands were chopped. Shaykh Kadhim al-Uzari, in his notion, he writes poetry. Amongst his poetry, he says this line. He says, يوم أبا الفضل استغاث به الهدى أو استعان به الهدى. Meaning, he says in his poetry that one day, the day of Kerbala, that Aba Fadl al-Abbas was looked at to be an assistance for Imam al-Hussein. That Imam al-Hussein counted on al-Abbas in Kerbala. So he thought to himself, how can I say this? How can I say that Sayyid al-Shuhada counted on someone, relied on someone, that had someone as support, as in he was the Huda, he was the guidance for all of us. How can I say that Imam al-Hussein counted on someone for support? So he says, in that night, as I'm thinking, he says, Imam al-Hussein came to me in my dream. He said to me, oh Shaykh, make sure that you write that notion that you want to. He says, the entire existence counted on me for my sacrifice. Yes, and indeed, it was me that counted on Aba Fadl al-Abbas as support. That everyone was counting on me. And my backbone was none other than Aba Fadl al-Abbas. That you find in Kerbala, when Shumar says to Aba Fadl al-Abbas, come, I have a covenant for you, O Abbas. Take this covenant and you are safe from fighting this war. As in everyone will perish that fights us. We are an army of 30,000+ and you are but a few soldiers. It's imminent your death. You'll find Aba Fadl al-Abbas would say, how can you give me safety while the son of Fatima doesn't have any safety? How can I get away? How can you take me away from a person in which Allah created me for? Oh Shumar, take this covenant of yours. You will find Abu Fadl al-Abbas when returning towards the tents. He would see no one that remains from the army of Imam al-Hussein. He would see amongst the plains of Kerbala, Habib, on the plains of Kerbala, Muslim, Zuhair, Hur. You'll find he looks towards them. He would see his family members. Of them, his brothers that were slain in Kerbala. Of them was Qamar. Would find moons of Bani Hashim, such as Qasim, such as Ali al-Akbar, all lifeless in the tents. He would come towards Imam al-Hussein saying, "Oh Aba Abdullah, give me permission. Let me go out. Let me fight the enemies. Let me sacrifice myself." Imam al-Hussein would say, "Ya Abbas, you are my flag bearer. You my entire army." Imagine, Imam al-Hussein had no one except Abbas. But Abbas was like an army in support for Imam al-Hussein. He would say, "Ya Abbas, if I lose you, then I lose my entire army. Oh Aba Fadl." Aba Fadl Abbas would move. He would listen to the Imam. All of a sudden, as he's going towards the tents, he would begin to hear the cries of the orphans. He would hear the children screaming, "Al-Atash, Al-Atash, the thirst, the thirst, Adrikna, assist us, Ya Abbas, Anta Saqi Atasha Kerbala. You brought water for us a few nights ago. Can you bring us water again?" He would come towards the tent, seeing Abdullah al-Radi' crying, wanting water. He would come across a young daughter of Imam al-Hussein by the name of Sakina. Sakina would hold on to the robes of Abbas. She would say, "Uncle Abbas, I am thirsty." Abbas, with all the honor that he had, all the ghira that he had, would go towards Imam al-Hussein. He would say, "Aba Abdullah, if you do not allow me to go and fight, then at least allow me to get water for these children, water for these people that are thirsty, for this yatama, for the women in the tents that are dying from thirst. Let me quench their thirst." You'll find Imam al-Hussein's tears begin to fall on his cheeks, thinking about Aba Fadl al-Abbas going. He would say, "Oh Abbas, I give you permission. Go and get the water for us." Notice, he doesn't tell him go and fight. Go and get the water for the children that are thirsty in the tents. So you'll find Abbas all of a sudden mounts his horse, looks towards the Mukhayyam, looks at Zainab, looks at Aba Abdullah, bids farewell, tells them, "I'll be returning soon. Let me get the water and I'll be back." You'll find Aba Fadl al-Abbas goes towards the battlefield. All of a sudden, Umar ibn Sa'd would say, "This is the son of Haydar. This is Abbas. This is the person that strikes fear into the hearts of the enemies. Surround him from every side." You'll find 4,000 horsemen stood between him and the river. You'll find this doesn't stop Aba Fadl al-Abbas, that he strikes them, opening up a gap between him and the river. When he attains the river, he begins to fill that water sack. When he begins to fill the water sack, as it's filling, you'll find Aba Fadl al-Abbas's hands would touch the water, that cold water in the plains of Kerbala, in the heat of Kerbala. Aba Fadl al-Abbas hasn't drank water for days, thirsty. He takes that water, feels the coolness in that hot day in the plains of Kerbala. Then he remembers the thirst of Aba Abdullah. He would remember the thirst of Hussein, the thirst of Sakina. He would throw that water back in the Euphrates. He would say, "Ya nafs min ba'd al-Hussein huni." There is no life for you if it's not for Hussein's existence, that you will not exist after Hussein. He would throw that water and he would fill that water sack and return back towards the tents. This is where the musibah starts, brothers and sisters. You'll find Umar ibn Sa'd says, make sure that you surround Abu Fadl al-Abbas from every angle. Do not let that water return back to the mukhayyam of Hussein, because if you do, then he will annihilate each and every one of you. Right now, Hussein is thirsty. Abbas is thirsty. They don't have strength. Surround them from every side. You would find Abu Fadl al-Abbas taking the water sack and going towards the mukhayyam. They surround Abu Fadl al-Abbas. They couldn't fight him one-on-one. So they resorted to doing what? Going from behind Abu Fadl al-Abbas. All of a sudden, as he's fighting, there is a man that hid himself behind a palm tree. You'll find as Abu Fadl al-Abbas approaches that tree, all of a sudden, Ya Mu'mineen, when Abbas is fighting, that man comes and strikes the right hand of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. He cuts off the right hand of Abu Fadl. He would say, Wallahi in qata'tumu yamini inni uhami abadan an dini. By Allah, if you cut off my right hand, I will remain steadfast defending this religion. You will find this doesn't faze Abu Fadl al-Abbas. He takes his sword with his left hand. As long as the water is intact, that's all he wanted. He would fight with his left hand. And you'll find again, they would resort to what? Going behind another palm tree. Around him, they would surround him. He's fighting with one hand. All of a sudden, as he approaches that palm tree, the la'een would come and he would strike the left hand of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. All of a sudden, he would say, قطعوا ببغيهم شمالي فاسقهم يا الله حر النار. They killed, they struck with their oppression my left hand. Oh Allah, let them feel the punishment of hellfire. You would find Abu Fadl al-Abbas, what does he do? Doesn't have a right hand, doesn't have a left hand. But he says, no, I will not stop. My mission was to get the water to Abu Abdullah. That's all I want. I want to get the water to the Mukhayyam, the water to Hussein, the water to Sakina. That's all I want. Umar ibn Sa'd at that moment, what would he say? He would say, shower Abbas with arrows. When he would shower Abbas with arrows, the traditions would tell us that one of the arrows would pierce the chest of Abbas. One of the arrows would pierce the eye of Abu Fadl. But the one that hurt him was the one that pierces the water of Hussein. He would stand there all of a sudden. He would say, I don't have a right hand. I don't have a left hand. I cannot see because there's an arrow in my eye. But the water is the one that hurts me because I want to bring it towards Abu Abdullah. I want to bring it towards Sakina. I want to bring it towards the orphans waiting for me. You find at that very moment, he's struggling because the one that hit his eye really pained Abu Fadl al-Abbas. You would find he cannot remove that arrow because he doesn't have hands. So what does Abbas do? He tries to remove it with his knees. As he's doing this, Abbas was very tall. He's trying to remove that arrow from his eyes with his knees. He brings his head down to remove that arrow. As his head is down, you'll find the la'een would come towards Abu Fadl al-Abbas with a pole. While Abbas was in that position, he would strike Abbas. When he would strike Abbas, Abbas would fall. Oh Mu'mineen, Fatima Zahra would say to one of the scholars, make sure that you do not skip this part. Tell every one of my mu'mineen, every one of our Shia, that moment is the one that hurts Fatima. Why, oh Fatima? She would say, make sure you tell my followers that when my Abbas fell off the horse, usually when a person falls, he breaks his fall with his hands. Abbas fell on his face, but when he fell, there was an arrow in his eye. When Abbas fell, he fell on the arrow, and the arrow goes deeper within the eyes of Abbas. Tell my followers, he would say as he fell, Abbas would never say to Imam Hussein, my brother. He would say, Mawla Hussein. But that last moment, he wanted to taste the pleasure of calling Hussein Akhi. He would say, Adrikni Akhi ya Hussein. Come to me, my brother. Hussein would hear this. He would run towards Abu Fadl al-Abbas. But the story, what does it say? The tradition says, as he ran towards Abbas, like an angry lion, he stops before he comes towards Abbas. He fell on the plains of Kerbala. Then he gets up. Then he rushes towards Abbas. Then again, for a second time, he falls on the ground. Then he gets up. Then he goes towards Abbas. Do you know why he fell twice? Because he was lifting from the ground the hands of Abu Fadl. He embraces them as he gets closer towards Abbas. Abbas can't see because from an eye he has an arrow. The blood became on the other eye and it became in an ocean that Abbas couldn't see. So he hears footsteps coming towards him. He doesn't know who it is. He would say, I ask you by who you worship. Give me moments until my brother Hussein comes. So I may bid farewell to him and he bids farewell to me. And then Hussein would come say, Abbas, I am your brother Hussein. He would see Abbas without hands, arrow in his eye, arrow in his chest. He would say the famous lines, Al-an inkasara dhari. Now my back is broken, oh Abbas. He couldn't remove that arrow from his eye. That's how much pain. It's as if to say, leave the arrow, oh Hussein, because this eye doesn't want to see Zainab alone after. I don't want to see Zainab. He would take the head of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. He would place it on his lap. Abbas would remove the head, put it back onto the ground. Again, Hussein would take the head of Abbas, puts it on his lap. Again, Abbas puts it on the dust of Kerbala. For a third time, Hussein would say, Abbas, why do you remove your head, oh my brother? He would say, Ya Hussein, right now my head is in your lap. But in a few moments, which lap is your head going to be in? He says, Hussein, leave me here, oh brother. I want to stay here. Don't take me back towards the tents. Why, Abbas? He says, I promised Sakina water. Hussein leaves him there. Imagine that when he leaves Abbas, all of a sudden Hussein's back is hunched. He comes towards the Mukhayyam. Look at this tradition. Sayyidah Zainab's waiting for Abu Abdullah to come back with news of Abbas. But she sees someone approaching that she doesn't recognize. She would say, Hussein left us. But when he came back from Abbas, it was a different Hussein. Every hair on his head turned white because of the tragedy of Abbas. In the day of judgment, you'll find this notion that Fatima al-Zahra would say, when she's given permission, oh Fatima, ask anything in the day of judgment. What do you want to ask? She would come with a basket and she would say to Allah, Ya Allah, judge between me and the ones that cut the hands of my